How do you do? I'm Dustaroo, and I want to talk to you about Dead by Daylight's perk system and the meta around it, and maybe a way we can fix it. The only reason I'm making this video is because of Choy's recent COD's Pick 10 system video he made, where he talks about an idea to improve the health in the game in many ways, with one massive currency system. Please, if you're interested in this video, you'll probably be interested in his too. It will also help in what I'll be talking about in this video, especially my issues with his ideas. It will help this all make a little bit more sense, alright? Cool. So let's talk about the state of Dead by Daylight and how I, a person who makes YouTube videos about my favorite freeze tag game, has the answer on how to turn it into a paradise, where no one finds flaws, everyone's playing fairly, nothing is too strong, and nothing is too weak. Everything is viable, but also everyone gets along.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Yeah, this isn't gonna change that. I don't think anything really could. The only real chance is making a brand new game that does not put the player base on two separate sides and asking them to get along. It's just never going to happen, no matter what changes. But the difference between having a seatbelt and not can be massive. So what are we talking about? What is this way to destroy the meta? Get rid of the bottleneck of the top meta perks. The constant use and absolute abandonment of perks that just can't stack up against the others. On both sides. How do we finally break up the gen regression meta? Maybe. Warning though, this won't stop camping and tunneling. Camping and tunneling is to Dead by Daylight what The Rock is to Sisyphus. An unchanging reality. The Rock will always need to be pushed. This is the perk currency system, or my version of it. So Dead by Daylight has 4 perk slots that you can fill whenever you want. If you want to make a hit and run build where you focus on injuring, spreading your pressure, you can do that. If you want to turn your brain off but still want to win, you bring 3 or 4 gen slowdown/regression perks. And maybe Noed, you can do that. This is the system we currently have. Complete player freedom. But with complete player freedom, you start to notice trends on what perks are played and what kind of builds you see. This is called the meta, the most effective tactics available. You see the meta perks, the ones where 5 out of the top 10 killer perks are exclusively gen regression and slowdown. Now I'm not saying you shouldn't use these, I'm just pointing out that these are popular for a reason, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Survivor perks are a little bit more dynamic in what is good and what's not, but you will see similar percentages of perk usage on them as well. Because, well, they're the best perks. People can say whatever they want about winning over having fun, which one is more important. That's a different discussion. What we all can agree on, though, is it's not fun when you get destroyed on either side. When the survivors fix generators like they're a pit crew, or when the killers make you work through 20 gens worth of repairing and you still have yet to finish that first generator, getting dumpstered feels bad. Sure, a couple games you can deal with it because that's just how things play out sometimes. You get bad games, you get bad teammates, you get sweaty survivors and killers. It eventually gets to a point though when it's every game or most of your games that the perks you bring just don't go as far as you need them to. You're not enjoying yourself with these weaker perks. So you're left with 2 options on how to fix that lack of enjoyment. It's either 1, to bring stronger and more consistent perks, or 2, stop playing the game and do something else. It's not a surprise that the perk variety is a lot more limited than we would like to see for those that didn't stop playing. Once again, you're not wrong for just wanting to have a good time playing Dead by Daylight the way that makes you happy, except in a few cases. You can't leave community problems for the community to fix themselves. Too many people have too many differing ideas or perceptions on what makes the game fun for them. These issues need to be fixed and implemented by the devs. They are the only ones with the ability to shape how the game acts. They can't completely force a playstyle, but they can build the boundaries around it. It will be the players who figure out how to play and break what's inside those boundaries. Also, a little note before we go over the actual idea. I'm not saying this needs or even should be a change added to the game. There are positives and there are negatives. I'm mostly just making this video to talk about those and see how the community feels about this idea. if they think it would make the experience better overall. My take is that if changes were to be made, like fundamental changes to improve the overall game health, and not just perk rebalances, this is the option I would go with, as of right now. Unless I hear or think of something I like better down the road. But fundamental changes are dangerous, because when you fundamentally change a big aspect to the game, it can do more harm than good to those who play it. So I'm not completely sold on it, but if changes were to be made, this would be the one I root for. This is also not my own completely new idea. I don't claim ownership over it at all. This is just my version of a system I've seen before that I like and think could work for Dead by Daylight. The Dead by Daylight perk currency system would work as so. Every perk in the game now has an assigned value to it. This is what I would call a perk price. A perk price would be based on the perk's overall power, its consistency, its individual impact, and how it pairs with other perks, even its strength on certain killers. All these aspects would come together to give a determined value to a perk. So let's do an example for this. Let's say Pain Resonance. Debatably the best killer perk in the game. Even if you don't think it's the best, everyone can agree that it is one of the best. It delivers a strong effect several times through a match, it fits in basically any build, and has very good synergies with several perks. Some of those perks which are very strong in their own right. This is meta, so taking all of these into consideration, you would give Pain Resonance a 5. This perk costs 5 points to include into your build you go into a match with. Then you have perks like Quick Gambit. This perk has an effect that's not very impactful. I would even call it the fluid that spews out of a person sick with dysentery. You will not get the opportunity to use this perk much in a match. The synergies with other perks is close to non-existent, and the actual effect when used is not even very powerful. It does not actually do a lot to change anything. It can get use, but you have so many more options that can do what it does, but better and more often. Quick Gambit would be assigned the value of 1 point. 1 point to include into your build for a match. So we have 2 perks, one considered the best of the best, and Quick Gambit. Pain Resonance is worth 4 times as much as Quick Gambit. The numbers can be changed to make the system overall more consistent, but just to keep it simple, let's just say survivors and killers both get 10 points to make a build around. So you want to include Pain Resonance into your build, but you also want to use Pop Goes the Weasel too. Let's say Pop Goes the Weasel is 4 points to use in your build. So now you have both Pain Resonance and Pop Goes the Weasel on your killer of choice. But you only have 1 point left to use and 2 perk slots. Instead of using Pain Resonance worth 5 points, I'm going to use Oppression, since it's only worth 2. Now my build is Pop worth 4 points, Oppression worth 2, which now adds up to 6 total points used, only leaving me 4 left to use. So I will finish my build with Brutal Strength, which is 3 points, and I only have 1 point left to use, so let's throw on Bloodhound, because it's only worth 1 point and I really want to use those 3 other perks, and I might as well fill my last perk slot up with something. This is just a rough example, so nowhere near actually balanced, so let's just bear with the example for how the system works and the choices the player has to make under it. So now instead of using all the best perks, the player will pick what they want to use and try and work out what other perks that would not only work for them, but allow them to use their currency wisely. This has the side effect of allowing some lower played or less effective perks to actually be used in someone's build. Since they're so cheap, they're the ones to toss on when you have a higher point build already. Now all the survivors and killers are compelled to play other perks besides the overall strongest. This, hopefully, would have the effect of lowering the overall power in matches and showing a lot more variety in the perks and playstyles we could see. It would shake up the meta. Some perks, even though they're really good, are very costly for the rest of your build, so using something cheaper for a similar effect could become more popular. Perks that we consider meta now are not seen as often because they're too top heavy, and more people would like to play well-rounded builds, giving us a slightly more fresh experience for the games we play. It also has a new way of balancing perks, so just because something is too powerful or too problematic on a specific killer, the effect does not need to be gutted or removed from the game. If a perk is getting way too much play, bump it up by 1 point and see how many people still use it. Another perk never sees play, lower it by 1 point and you'll probably get a lot of players using it for the value it now offers them. Of course, you could still change the actual perk effects, but now there's a less complicated, easier to implement way to change perks and their impact on the overall meta of the game. And with it being so easy to adjust the cost, perks that become too problematic can be hotfixed much quicker. Another fun positive, and I really like this from Choy's video, is if you have any leftover points, you only use, let's say, 9 out of your 10 points, the remaining points you still have can be converted into blood point bonuses. So if you have a point left over, that's a 10% blood point bonus for the match, or something like that. If you don't want to use any perks at all, you can give yourself a massive blood point boost for playing on hard mode. I think it's a fun change. There is issues with this kind of system though, and I'm sure a bunch of you will share some others I didn't even think of while covering this video. The biggest one I can think of is limiting player expression with builds. While this issue helps lower the overall meta top heaviness, at least initially, for those players, both killer and survivor, who like to experiment and try wacky ideas, and perhaps even content creators trying to make cool build ideas, it could close some of that off. Even if the build is not overall too strong, you may just be off by a point or two and it causes the whole thing to just not really work. I don't think it would be a massive problem as all the creative and niche builds would be unusable, but I do know for a fact that some probably would. I just don't know how many, and that's the problem I fear. Part of the charm of this game for people is the freedom to experiment, even at the cost of being punished. So a hard wall may be too much for some people and burn them out. We have to ask ourselves though, if that is a problem even a little bit, is the problems that were solved from the soul-crushing meta being removed enough to justify that new one? I can't know that. It's for the players and the devs to decide and think about. It's not even like the system solves too many problems, like some perks are also better on certain killers over others. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's a problem that can't be fixed without even more drastic and complicated changes. Some killers would benefit from certain perks way more because of their mobility, and others having slow trap-like abilities. Unless the devs are adjusting perk costs for each individual killer, which has tons of potential for causing issues, this is actually where Choy's video comes into play, because I did want to talk about why I don't think their idea is as good as the perk exclusive one I suggest, and even mine has its issues. The only reason I made my video is because of Choy's. It got me starting to think about my currency system idea, which I didn't put much thought into at all before. I thought it'd be cool, but that's basically where I left it. But Choy's idea really stuck with me, so I got thinking. Their currency system does try to fix certain issues like nurse bottlenecking perk design in the game. As a perk could be good on most killers, it could be devastating on her, which is a great idea in practice but comes with so many more issues that it's really not worth it in my opinion. To keep his idea short, and if you really do want full details, you can go watch Choy's video, it's linked in the description. Instead of just perks being used in the currency system, their overall suggestion was everything being included. Perks, add-ons, offerings, survivor items, they all have their own unique costs to help limit, powerful pub stomps. This being exemplified by each killer having their own individual currency amounts. So killers like Trapper have 100 points, while Nurse would only have 50 or something similar. The idea being strong killers who by their own kits are drastically stronger than others have less options to bring in stronger builds, while weaker, lesser played killers are more appetizing for people trying to use stronger builds. The overall idea is to limit power creep of the game and bring all characters to a similar middle level, while also tackling issues with map offerings, strong add-ons, and the stale meta. And I really like the idea of such a massive attempt to try and freshen up the game, but the overall effect is like trying to juggle way too many balls and having them all just fall onto the ground. It's easier to focus on 2 to 3 balls instead of 12. Does this system make lesser played killers more likely to be played? Yes. Does it solve the issue of why some killers are played more than others? No. It causes bigger problems than before. The example we'll use is Freddy, since no one wants to touch him like a leper-looking PDF file he is.
Ew! Get out of here, man!
The idea being that if you allow Freddy to have a 4-course meal while the other killers starve on lowly cans of beans would be a good way to level them both out. But I want you all to be honest and think for a second. Why don't you want to play certain killers? Is it because they're not good? Or is it because their playstyle is boring and janky and not good to you? I don't like to play Freddy anymore because I don't like playing Freddy anymore. It's not his strength, but it would be a lie if I said it wasn't a part of it. But the strength is only one aspect of why I would play something. It's not the whole deal. I don't like playing the artist because I don't like using her power, even though she is one of the better killers in the game, and others tend to agree since you never see her. What happens to the twins in this system? We all know the twins are considered monsters at high MMR, so how does this killer get ranked? Does this killer get a lot of points to play with because no one plays this character? Or do they only get a few points because the people who do play them know how to play them really well? Which causes 2 bad effects, where now the twins are either remarkably more dynamic in what they can use in the game compared to most other killers, and we see a massive population boom, making a lot of people unhappy because they don't want to play the twins, but they are the best and they want to win, and just have lobbies wiped compared to other killers. Or you have the flip side where they have no points, and the people who do play the twins want to play them less, basically sealing the coffin that no one is going to play twins or even start trying to learn them, because they feel even worse to play as. This does not only apply to the twins, but many other killers, where most of the community might consider them low tier or not fun, but still have a massive kill count according to the devs. Pinhead, Pig, Skull Merchant all come to mind. How would they be ranked? The solution to just making boring killers have the best toys to play with does nothing but make players have to see more killers they don't want to see and pushing players onto killers they don't want to play. If you want to make lesser picked killers more likely to be played, you need to make them more interesting while being strong. People don't play Hag or Singularity not because they're bad, but because they're not fun to play for most people. Whether they just feel bad or they require a lot more skill and effort to use well. The system also attempts to fix map offerings, where survivors or killers get taken forcefully to hard maps. The solution to just locking them behind points either causes them to be a dead mechanic or just not relevant to the whole currency mechanic with several characters, as some killers will just never be able to use map offerings again, and will be at the whims of survivors, while some others can just use them whatever, because the cost doesn't really matter to them. Then add in Mori's, point offerings, it just becomes a mess. If we want map offerings to be less of an issue, you have to remove the mechanic or fix the maps. I can't think of another way to fix them without just getting rid of them or making them less impactful. That's a separate issue. Certainly one that won't be solved by a currency system. We also have add-ons which are well known to be inconsistent across the game. Killers like Nemesis and Pyramid Head being laughingstocks with how bad their add-ons are, as you would only ever use a couple of them ever. So if these characters also happen to have a low amount of points, we would just never see them use add-ons in favor of problematic maps or stronger perks. This would just have the effect of causing a huge mechanic for many characters to become even less relevant than they already were. So my overall response to this idea in particular is that it causes way too much bloat of issues for both the devs and the community. Even with the system I propose, it opens a door for a lot of subjectivity, which would cause a lot of conflict in the community, and likely the dev team too, but like 10 times as much. The amount of people who would be screaming to give their killer main more points, or lower the points of other killers would be astronomical. It's a system that causes more issues than it solves, but I will give you, it would be a massive game shakeup. The thing is though, if you shake something too much, it bubbles up and overflows. and you lose a lot of what was inside that you could never get back. I really like what Choy has done, and I would rather have more people thinking of new ways to make the game a healthier state than it is now, to make it a better experience for more players. While I don't agree this change could be beneficial, it's still fun to think about, and it made me really think about what I do and don't like about this game, and how I think it could be improved. I like a lot of these videos because it's interesting to hear how other people perceive the game. Most of all, I like seeing the comments about how others feel about these changes. Some make me rethink my own opinions, some solidify my opinions, and the others make me laugh at how someone actually wrote that out seriously. They wrote that comment and they're serious about it. But that will bring us to the end of the video where I ask you how you feel about the ideas brought up in this video. Do you like any of it? Do you think it would be more of a detriment than a help? Or do you have a better idea on how to improve the health of the game while not sacrificing a lot of the fun about it? That's what this video is all about. I want to hear from you. I want to see if people like this, because I'm torn on if I want it or not. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please hit that like button and maybe even subscribe. A couple seconds to you and a lot of help for me. So thank you all for watching. My name is Dustaroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye bye.